So, hello, I'm Mira Grant. That's Mira Grant's mom in the back, pretending she's not here with all of us weirdos. And I am here today because I was asked to be, which is a great reason to be at the Google campus. I'm going to be reading to you today from When Will You Rise, which is a short hardcover I put out a couple of years ago, because it's got some pieces in it that are actually a good length to read and don't leave you going, wait, what? The last timed reading I did, I stopped in the middle of a word. To be fair, it was a very long word that I didn't want to pronounce anyway, but it was still sort of jarring for the people involved. After the reading, we're going to have a brief Q&A. I know some of y'all have books. I have a pen. I am happy to scribble on your books. I'm actually happy to scribble on just about anything. If you really work the Q&A, we might engage the whiteboard. So think of questions that will require diagramming sentences or explaining how the R-naught works, and we will go there. So this is apocalypse scenario number 683, the box. Andy, where's the beer? Look in the crisper. Ryan paused before asking the obvious. Why is the beer in the crisper? Because grain's a vegetable, said Elsa, sensibly enough, as she dumped tortilla chips into a yellow plastic bowl. That means beer is good for you. I don't even know what to say to that, said Ryan, before digging a beer out from under a wilted head of lettuce. Is Mike coming? Mike's coming, Cole isn't. Andy picked up the tray of sandwiches, pausing to kiss Elsa on the cheek before exiting the kitchen. The tray of sandwiches was placed ceremoniously on the dining room table, next to a veggie platter, a bowl of salsa, and a second bowl filled with peanut M&Ms. He glanced back as Ryan followed him to the table, adding, "Before you ask, Sandy's coming. She just had to stop and pick up some root beer." Right. Ryan sat in his usual chair, cracking open his first beer of the evening. He'd stop after the third when Sandy's nagging became too much for him to handle. None of this was a mystery to anyone, and that was how all of them liked it. Playing the apocalypse game for 15 years had transformed predictability into one of the weekly game night's greatest attractions. Spend some time with your friends, play a board game you didn't really care about, and plot the downfall of mankind. Pure bliss. Cole's absence was the only black spot on what was otherwise shaping up to be a perfect evening. She'd been more and more scarce over the past few years as her job, which she never described in detail, being willing to say nothing beyond, "I work for the government," and "I still use my medical degree," kept her away from home more and more often. Even saying that much made her visibly uncomfortable until they all stopped asking. Still, Cole missing the apocalypse game was a new phenomenon, new enough to be unnerving. Out of all the players, she'd always been the most reliable. "Remember the time Cole had pneumonia?" asked Ryan. "She missed 2 sessions in a row. And then she showed up for the 3rd session in her bathrobe." Andy laughed. Mike was so disappointed when he realized she had her clothes on underneath it. Those were the days. Ryan took a long swig from his beer, amusement fading. "This is the 3rd session. She's never missed 3. There's a first time for everything." "I'm worried about her," said Elsa, emerging from the kitchen with the bowl of chips. "She's been working too much. She needs the apocalypse game to take her mind off things." Ryan snorted. "I'm going to give you a second to think about what you just said." "I stand by it. Cole started the game. She should be able to find the time to play." "I'm sure she'll be back as soon as she can," said Andy. "I hope so," Elsa sighed. "Maybe Mike can tell us more." "Maybe," Andy agreed dolefully. Silence descended. Their little social group was just like 1,000 others all over the world, at least superficially. A bunch of old friends getting together to play games and talk until well after any sensible person's bedtime. They met in high school, a bunch of strange, smart kids living on the fringes of teenage society. They clustered together in self-defense as much as anything else. It wasn't until midway through freshman year that they all started to actually like each other. The first apocalypse game was practically an accident. They'd been lazing around Cole's house, bored and restless and looking for something to do. They'd tried everything from poker to Candyland until Cole made her characteristically mild suggestion, "Why don't we figure out how to destroy the world?" The first scenario was Cole's, of course. It involved a chemical spill wiping out the world's plankton supply. Without plankton, the small fish died. Without the small fish, the big fish died. Without the big fish, everything else in the ocean followed suit. It was an ineffective, inelegant apocalypse, and after they'd spent the whole night debating it, Ryan said he could do better. Elsa dared him to prove it. A week later, he did. Sandy took the week after that, and so on and so on. High school ended, college began. Dan and Tony moved away. Elsa and Andy got married. Cole and Mike didn't, although they may as well have. And always, always there was the game. Maybe it was a strange way to spend 15 years of Friday nights. At the end of the day, none of them really cared. The 5 players took their seats around the dining room table. The chair next to Mike remained conspicuously empty. None of them could avoid glancing at it at least once. Cole's absence was palpable, and it couldn't be ignored, no matter how hard everyone tried. She should have been there. Mike cleared his throat. I brought something. Well, Cole sent something. Beyond her love, her regrets, and a promise that she'll do her best to make it next week, asked Sandy, reaching for her second root beer. If you run out, we're not stopping so you can go for more, said Andy. Sandy shot him a glare. I know that. Elsa raised a hand, stopping the familiar argument before it could begin. What did she send? Well, Sandy was right about Cole sending her love and her regrets. She also sent this. Mike pulled a digital recorder from his pocket and set it down on the table between the tortilla chips and the veggie platter. Tonight's supposed to be her turn, right? Right, said Ryan dubiously. So what, you're going to present her scenario and record our discussion? No, Cole's presenting her own scenario. I'm here to play the game. Mike pressed the play button. The recorder beeped once before Cole's sweet, always slightly distracted voice came through the speaker, just as clear as if she'd actually been there. Hi, guys. I'm sorry I couldn't be there in person tonight, but I had things I needed to take care of. This is a scenario I've been working on for a while, and I think it's pretty solid. There'll be beeps every few minutes, like this one. The recorder beeped again, to signal that it's time to pause for discussion before you continue. I think I've predicted all your responses. You could still surprise me. There was a third beep. Mike leaned forward and paused the recording. Well, is everybody cool with this? It's weird, said Ryan. Weird is good. Sandy giggled nervously. I guess it's okay. I didn't want to skip her turn anyway. Andy, Elsa? I'm cool with it, sure, but do you know what's on the recording? Asked Andy. Not to be a stickler, but scenarios aren't supposed to be shared before the game. She recorded the whole thing at work and gave it to me before she left for the airport, said Mike. I'm not a cheater. I didn't listen. Then I'm cool with it too, said Elsa firmly. Play the scenario. Mike pressed the button. If you're listening to this, that means you've decided to let me take my turn. Thank you. I really appreciate it. Anyway, this is apocalypse scenario number 683. I've never been good with names. I'm more interested in the science, so I call this scenario the box. Sounds promising, said Sandy, and took a swig of root beer. Ryan motioned for her to be quiet. She stuck her tongue out at him. Cole's voice continued implacably. First, establishment of the scenario. The box is based around a man-made bacterial pandemic. At the time the scenario begins, the bacteria in question have already been released into the human population at several geographically distinct locations. All the locations were in North America, but they all included a very high probability of intercontinental transmission within 24 hours, as in Andy's Ticket to Die apocalypse. Cute, said Andy. The bacterial strain you're dealing with was designed by a young researcher employed by the Bioterrorism Division of the United States government. It was originally commissioned under the auspices of counter-terrorism. Cole's voice turned briefly bitter, causing Andy and Elsa to exchange worried glances. Bitterness wasn't native to Cole's state of being. The people in charge lied about it, of course. That is vital to understanding this scenario. It begins with the assumption that if you reported the scenario to the government, they'd believe you, because the government is the reason the situation exists in the first place. The recorder beeped. Mike hit the pause button. There's our setup. It's pretty simplistic, especially for Cole, said Ryan. Somebody drops a test tube, somebody else tells the people in charge, and everything gets mopped up with minimal loss of life. The world doesn't end. Nobody dropped a test tube, said Elsa. She said it was released into the human population in several geographically diverse locations and implied that they were chosen to create the widest possible infection pattern. This thing was intentionally released. The government angle still makes it simple, said Andy. Sandy shrugged. So it'll be a short apocalypse. Go ahead and press play, Mike. I want to hear what comes next. Mike nodded and pressed the button. The bitterness was gone when Cole resumed her explanation. Instead, she sounded cheerful, if a little overtired. Second, elaboration of the scenario. You're looking at a bacterial infection based on a combination of whooping cough and tuberculosis, just like Ryan's no-air apocalypse, only this time the bacteria has been tailored for antibiotic resistance. The first generation has an artificially long latency built in to allow for extensive spread. Once the first generation of bacteria have incubated to maturity in human lungs, the latency will be halved until the final projected generation, where it will default to the standard latency period for whooping cough. Symptoms include coughing, runny nose, headache, difficulty breathing, muscular spasms, secondary pneumonia, and of course, death. Fatality estimates place the death toll at approximately 91% of the infected population. It's impossible to accurately project susceptibility, but projections indicate that as much as 80% of the human race could be infected by the end of the second latency. Beep. Pause. Okay, that's charming. Sandy wrinkled her nose. Has Cole got off her meds or something? She's not normally this nasty with her scenarios. Mike didn't say anything. He reached almost mechanically for the chips, scooping up a handful. His eyes looked haunted. Something about that look frightened Andy in ways he wasn't sure he could put into words. Something was wrong. Mike, he said, you okay, buddy? Is Cole okay? She's been working a lot lately. Mike forced a laugh. She's just stressed, that's all. Let's keep going. He hit the button before anyone could object, and Cole spoke again. Three, explanation of apocalypse stemming from scenario. Buckle up, guys. Here's where the real game starts. See, this researcher, she was recruited right out of college. Her scholarship to medical school wasn't a scholarship. Not really. It was a government loan. They'd pay for everything, and she'd go to work for them when she graduated. They wanted her that much because she was that good. Something like pride crept into Cole's voice. They knew she'd be able to change the world. Elsa's hand clamped down on Andy's elbow, squeezing hard. None of them said anything. For a while, she was happy with the deal. She thought she was protecting the world against the bad guys, that she could stave off the apocalypse she'd been worrying about since she was in high school. She tore viruses and bacteria apart and recombined them in ways no one else had ever been able to accomplish. She read, she researched. She was going to change the world. Only it turned out she already had, because she started hearing about this outbreak in Korea that perfectly mirrored one of her projects, one of her defensive projects. People were dying of something that sounded a lot like her enhanced strain of bubonic plague. She went to her superiors and asked them if they were going to send help, and they told her to go back to her lab and get back to work. I saw that on the news, whispered Elsa. So many people died. Cole continued. She got scared then, our researcher, and she started really looking at the things she'd been working on, the things that were supposed to help people, only they weren't helping people at all. They were hurting them. And everyone said that was okay because we weren't the only ones. Every government in the world was doing it, and that made it okay. That made it necessary, because if we didn't build it, someone else would. She stopped, seeming to lose her place for a moment before repeating, someone else would. It wasn't something she could stop by walking away, you know? It was going to happen. We'd made it inevitable. She'd made it inevitable. So maybe the best thing she could do was stop it all before it got even worse. Stop it the only way she knew how. Stop the whole damn arms race for a while and give everyone a chance to breathe. For certain values of everyone, anyway. Because if she didn't, things have been getting worse for a long time. Everybody knows that. If humanity isn't stopped, they're going to kill the planet, not just themselves. Someone had to do something. She was just the one watching when the time family came. Beep. Pause. This is sick, said Sandy, glaring at Mike. Why is she doing this? There's not even anything to discuss. It's just sick. Mike. Elsa worried her lip between her teeth for a moment before saying, Cole never told us who she worked for. No. Mike's voice was bleak. She wasn't allowed to. They made her sign a lot of papers. A lot of papers in exchange for what? Asked Andy. Medical school. Mike pressed the button. The release happened 6 days ago. The infection has a latency of 23 days. Additional releases are ongoing because... Cole stopped again before starting back up, sounding more and more like a broken marionette. She was running down. Because the government funded the original project, they might be able to find a vaccine if they start looking immediately. It wouldn't be hard to type the bacterial strain, and there are only a few researchers working with it. They don't know about all the modifications that were made. They need to start right away. But there's a catch. Isn't there always? Asked Mike. The researcher who created the disease, she's listening in on all the big channels and a lot of the small ones. She has people feeding her information, people who have really good reason to be loyal to her, people who see the same solution she does. And if she hears a whisper from any government, anywhere, that links this pandemic to her research, she'll release the second project she worked on, the bad one. This isn't the bad one? Ryan sounded incredulous. I mean, come on, Cole. Here's where things get dicey, guys. See, the second virus isn't bacterial. It's an actual virus based on a hemorrhagic out of Africa called Lassa fever. It's got a long latency and a high mortality rate, and that's without clever virologists playing with the way it works. And this one hasn't got a vaccine, although it does have a nasty little interlock with the vaccine for the bacterial strain. If you would have been immune to the original pandemic, either naturally or due to immunization, you'll get the second virus and you'll die. Cole sighed deeply. I'm sorry about that. Is she crazy? Demanded Sandy. I don't know, said Ryan. Cole's laughter startled them all, even Mike, who jumped in his chair and nearly knocked over Sandy's root beer. It was a brittle, jagged sound, like broken glass. Okay, I give you guys, she said. This, ooh, I have a friend shit is so high school, isn't it? I built the virus. I built them both. The scenario is still valid. The releases started last week. Manhattan, San Francisco, and, best of all, Disney World. I put it in the misters, just like Elsa's black fungus apocalypse. Thanks for that, Elsa. It works great. Elsa looked ill. Cole kept talking. I love you guys. You're the best friends I've ever had. I mean, you may be the only friends I've ever had. The only real ones, anyway. That's why I'm leaving this up to you. I vaccinated you all against the first disease months ago. You're probably the safest people on the planet. Yes, even you, Sandy. I know you slept with Mike, but I don't really care about that anymore. It's too trivial a concern. Sandy and Mike exchanged a glance, her eyes wide and horrified, his merely resigned. Cole kept talking. You're all going to live through what comes next. It won't be fun, but you'll live. I knew you wouldn't want to do it alone. You were always more social than I was. So I've arranged to have a box couriered to Elsa and Andy's place tonight during the game. Inside, you'll find 10 doses of vaccine for each of you. Use them however you want. Save your family or your friends or your doctor. It's up to you. You can even give them to the government. And if you do, I'll die with you because I'm immune to the first pandemic, just like you are. Cole's voice turned wistful. I wish I could have given you this scenario in person. I think it's the best one I've ever put together. I really wanted to, but in the end, I couldn't risk it. I love you all. I love you all so much. I hope you'll find the answer that's right, because to be honest, I can't. All I can do is end the world and let you decide how much of it survives. This is Cole Evans signing out. A pause, and then, in a whisper they all had to strain to hear, forgive me? The recorder beeped one more time. Silence fell. Ryan was the first to react. He laughed nervously. Okay, wow. That's the best mindfuck we've had in a while, points to Cole. I don't think she was kidding, said Elsa. We haven't answered the scenario yet, guys, said Mike. Do we call the government and die, or do we condemn millions of people because we're too chicken to pick up a phone? Dude, did you really sleep with Sandy? Asked Ryan. Mike didn't answer. Won't calling the government mean killing even more people? Asked Andy. She said the second virus was worse. We don't know that, said Mike. Maybe there's only one virus. Because Cole was always an underachiever, said Ryan. If she says there's a second virus in the scenario, there's a second virus in the scenario. I'm just not buying the idea that it's real life. Are you willing to risk it? Asked Elsa. We're not risking anything, snapped Sandy. It's a game. It's a stupid game, and that's all it's ever been, and that's all it's ever going to be. Stop taking this so seriously. Cole's just messing with us. That's all. The doorbell rang. Silence fell again, thick and heavy as a curtain going down. Elsa looked around the group, meeting everyone's eyes in turn. Then she slowly pushed the chair back from the table, stood, and walked to answer the door. She was halfway across the room when the person outside began to cough. So that is the box. I did that to my friends for a year. Like, I'd literally go, if you have no reason to believe I didn't just wipe out mankind, what would you do? I'm a great friend. My friend Sean said that he would go out in the street, vaccinate the first 10 strangers he saw, and then eat a bullet, because if I had actually done this, he had failed somehow to stop me before I could get that far. And I'm like, that's the best response. So does anybody have any questions? Okay, so everybody's freaking out about Ebola. Ebola. Ebola is nasty. We do not like Ebola. It's very tragic that it's killing a lot of people, and it's really too bad that we don't have a good vaccine. But the problem with Ebola is that it has a very low R0. Now, the R0 is how many people you can conceivably pass the virus along to before you die a horrible death or are somehow no longer infectious but still alive. If you manage the second, congratulations. The R0 of Ebola, on average, is 2. So you can pass it to 2 more people, and that's with an absolutely idealized chain of transmission. So you manage to bleed, spit, cry, or piss on 2 other people before you're just dead. This is why I usually tell folks that are not actually medical professionals that if you want to avoid Ebola, just don't lick people. The flu, on the other hand, and this is why we're all getting our flu shots this year, unless we have a good medical reason not to. Any guesses on the R0 of the flu? No, not quite that good, but it has an estimated R0 of 10. So every case of the flu is good for a minimum of 10 additional cases. And what's really great about the flu is that it is, unlike Ebola, which is purely body fluid transmissible, fomite transmissible. Fomites mean that anything that's been touched by our initial carrier, anything at all, is now also infectious and can add to that R0 of 10. So we've got 10 from the people you breathe on, and then an additional 3 from stuff you touched. Yay! So get your flu shot. 10,000 Americans will die of the flu this year. 10,000. That's actually not a good reason to be smiling. I just always am when I'm talking about the flu. It's like a nervous tick. So that's the R0. The R0 is great. The R0 is the reason that sexually transmitted diseases are sexually transmitted and not caught in other ways. They usually have a very low R0.
So you wrote that song about the Black Death like 10 years ago, and just recently I've started seeing articles that are vindicating what you were espousing in that song. How do you feel about that?
I feel real good, because I had okay, so the song she's referring to, the song about the Black Death, is actually called The Black Death, and it is a roughly 8-minute long schoolhouse rock style song explaining why the causative agent for the Black Death in Europe was probably not Yersinia pestis or the bubonic plague bacterium, as most people believe, but was instead an unidentified hemorrhagic fever that had traveled up the Nile River to the Middle East and then made the jump to Messina, Italy. But I literally took all of the science on the side of the hemorrhagic fever theory, or rather about 80% of the science on the hemorrhagic fever theory, and boiled it down into cheerful rhyming verses like, well, we blamed it on the rats and we blamed it on the fleas. We were ignoring crucial facts about the spread of the disease, and I think it's time we call for a more thorough inquisition, because it's clear that the Black Death possessed a droplet-based transmission. Now, a droplet-based transmission means I sneeze and then you die. It's a fairly common vector, and we think it's largely why the quarantine developed to protect us from diseases and to help to keep your family from dying of my sneezes. So it's 8 minutes of that. And it goes into a lot of very strong evidentiary, support for the hemorrhagic fever theory. The main reason I think we should be considering this information isn't because we're somehow magically going to bring back the thousands of people if we say, oh, it wasn't bubonic plague, you can get out of your grave now. But because when we take this stuff just as a given, when we say, oh, it absolutely was this bacteria that we can easily cure today, we become a lot less respectful of things like plague pits that are still all over Europe, some of which are in good permafrost conditions for the preservation of virological, sustainability. You crack one of those puppies open, we could all die. There was a study published, I think 4 years ago now, where this one German consortium said, yes, absolute proof. We did a core sample in a known plague pit, and we found Yersinia pestis bacterium. So everyone who says that it's not Yersinia pestis is wrong and can go home. And by the way, it's totally okay for the people who funded this study to dig up the plague pits and run a high-speed rail right through the middle of them. We all live in California. If you've lived in California for more than 8 months, you have been exposed to the Yersinia pestis bacteria. You probably have it in the pulp of your teeth, because that's one of the places that it builds up. So if I were to yank a molar from every person in this room, before Google security arrested me for assault, I could test them and find proof that Yersinia pestis was endemic on the Google campus, and thus clearly that is what had killed you all. And not the crazy woman with the pliers. So there's very strong evidence for hemorrhagic fever. There's very little evidence for bubonic plague. There's actually more evidence on the hemorrhagic fever side of things, which is kind of fascinating when you really start digging into it. But everyone accepts that it was bubonic plague. Why? Because their third grade history teacher told them it was bubonic plague. And that is very sloppy thinking scientifically. Now, as she mentioned here in the front row, in the last couple of years, as more people started really looking at this, because somebody finally realized, wait, plague pit. Let's not dig that up. Hey! So they started really looking at it and realizing that there's some strong evidence to support the idea that this was a novel virus. And not only that, but it was a novel virus we have not encountered again as yet, which is part of what is driving up the interest as more and more novel viruses are emerging from their natural habitats and interacting with humanity. If we assume that the Black Death was something that made the transition from the Middle East to Europe, and we have a very strong chain to prove that. We have the landing and departure records for the ship that is widely accepted as the first point of entry for the Black Death into Europe, and it sailed out of Jerusalem into Messina, Italy. So we've got great support. That could come back. It could come to visit us again, and we would be looking at a hemorrhagic fever with a fatality rate of approximately 97%, an R0 of an estimated 15 to 25, and a latency period of 31 days. Yay! So I'm very excited that all this is coming up. It's great. I love the Black Death song. I have a huge amount of affection for it because that song is the reason the CDC started talking to me at all when I was doing the research for my first zombie novel. I called and said, hi, my name is Shannon McGuire, because that is my real name, and I had not become Mira Grant yet. Hi, my name is Shannon McGuire, and I want to write a book about zombies, and do you have any researchers that would be willing to talk about diseases with me? And they were like, no. This is the CDC. We don't do. Oh, okay. Well, if anybody says that they might be willing to, can I leave an email address just in case someone's like bored? And they're, oh, fine. We'll take your info if you'll go away. And so I start spelling my name, and the lady goes, wait. That's how you pronounce that? Are you the Black Death girl? I'm like, what? She says, did you write a song about the Black Death? Yes. I'm going to put you on speaker. Prove it. So I had to sing the entire Black Death song for the secretarial pool at the CDC. And then magically 8 doctors were happy to talk to me. So great deal of affection for that song.
How did you get into diseases?
Well, I caught some. And that was pretty neat. I have OCD. So I have some of the issues that people with OCD have. And I realized when I was in high school that I was verging on becoming a germaphobe, that I was starting to get really, really twitchy and upset when anyone was sick with anything anywhere near me. And at that point, I kind of sat down and went, okay, this is nascent. This is becoming an obsession. We can either have it be the kind of obsession where I wind up living in a bubble, or we can have it become the kind of obsession where I think that jamming my hand into a bucket of maggots is fun. Bubble, maggots. Bubble, I like maggots. Bubble, ooh, let's go over there. So I started reading up on diseases and learning everything I could because I wanted to shift the burgeoning obsession over to understanding. Basically, if I knew enough about them, I would still be afraid of them, but it would be a respectful fear rather than an irrational fear. And I was lucky in that I did it at the time. I know several folks that did not, who were in a couple of counseling circles with me in group therapy who can't touch things now. Like they can't pee in public, they can't share food because they've gotten so frightened. Whereas I'm like, nah, I know the odds. It's all good. Let's get tapeworms. It's a party. So I started studying them. I kind of thought about going to medical school for a little while, but the money just wasn't there, sadly. If it had been, I think I'd be working for the EIS by this point and having a lovely time going off into the jungle and kicking things to see if they're full of Ebola. We still don't know where the Ebola comes from, so that is an ongoing party that just is rolling. It eats up EIS operatives like nobody's business. But viruses and diseases and parasites are just fascinating. Like, they're older than we are. Some of them are so old that they are actually a part of our DNA. If you hear people talk about junk DNA, the things that our bodies intentionally manufacture in our little DNA factories and then carry around that don't do anything, some of them are viruses that are older than the human race that we've just kind of programmed in there and now carry around with us. We don't know why. We don't know what they're doing. We don't know what they might do someday. There's always the possibility that we're going to have a genetic therapy or we're going to modify something in such a way that it unlocks one of these protoviruses and we all turn into snake people. We don't know. It's the best thing. It's like hacking the human genome, and I love it. It makes me so happy, and it makes it really hard to have dinner with me. Really, really hard.
Back to the CDC, I was curious what kind of zombie questions you had for them, and were they really helpful?
They were extremely helpful. I wanted to put together a virus that could actually make zombies. They're not zombies in the Romero sense where they've died and then resurrected, because frankly, that doesn't work. You can write horror or fantasy about those, but you can't really do science fiction unless they're being controlled by nanobots or something other than the body itself. And I wanted to do science fiction. So it's like, okay, if I gave them all rabies, would they be zombies? And the CDC's like, let's talk about people that actually have rabies. Oh. Well, what if I gave them rabies mixed with the bird flu? No. Well, I heard about violent behavior from people that had been infected with Lassa fever. What if I gave, no. What if I modified Marburg and combined it with the virility of a rhinovirus and caused it to become completely airborne, gave it to the entire population at once, and caused massive viral amplification, anything of over 40 pounds? Don't do that. Which really was one of the best moments, was just having the doctor I was talking to go, don't do that. Like, that's a bad plan that you have there. So that's how I got my zombie virus. They were very helpful. I wound up writing a lot about the CDC, and they enjoyed the things I wrote about them very much. They're like, we never get to play that role in the story. Go team us. We're evil. So it was fun. They're really nice people. If you ever have the chance to tour a CDC facility, I highly recommend it. It is in some ways weirdly like going to Google. There's big signs everywhere that say no one that doesn't work here past this point. But on the other side of that point is Marburg. So I'm just assuming that every room in this building that I'm not allowed to go in is full of deadly viruses. It makes me feel very at home here.
Shannon, I can only assume that someone who writes as much about apocalypses as you do has a post-apocalypse plan. Would you like to share it with us?
No. The first rule of post-apocalyptic survival is don't talk about where you're going to be post-apocalypse, because then people will just show up. I was watching the science fiction channel. I spent the day after Thanksgiving watching all of the terrible movies on my DVR. It was amazing. Like 13 hours of bad B movies taped off the science fiction channel. And one of them was called Mutant World. And it was terrible. It was so bad. It made no sense at all. It's like, what? No. Mutation doesn't work like that. But one of the things that I thought was there are frequently moments of startling realism in science fiction channel movies. Like, it'll be 98% random bullshit, and then there's 2% where you're like, yeah, that is exactly what would happen. So we open the movie with a Planet Buster comet heading toward the East Coast, and this family of survivalists that are part of a survivalist organization that have been prepping for something like this for the last 20 years, scrambling. Going, okay, everybody, go, head for the silo, stop at the depot, pick up your part, bring everyone. They're running checklists, they're getting everyone inside. Now, these are people who it is made very clear in just the 5 minutes that we see, everyone has been making fun of for 20 years. Oh, they're the crazy survivalists. The fiance of the girl in the group refuses to go with her. because it's just your dad doing another drill and this is more crazier survivalist bullshit. And then as they are getting the last of their people into their silo and getting ready to lock down, it becomes impossible to hide the fact that the comet is coming anymore. I appreciate the accelerated timeline, because this movie was not about the comet, it's about the after effects. We got all this in 5 minutes. You know, the comet is coming. The president has admitted the comet is coming and is saying, go to your basement, you'll be fine. And everyone who lives in the city around the silo who knows about the crazy survivalists comes running. They get a Black Friday level rush on their silo from people going, I want to get inside, I want to be where the safety is, I want to be where the food is. Now the survivalists have very carefully constructed this silo. They're figuring it's got to hold them for the next 20 years. So there's only so much food, there's only so much water. And it's a beautiful grasshopper and the ants moment, where the survivalists, on the one hand, are being horrible people. They start gunning down people that are getting too close to their silo, who won't turn back when they're told, you know, you have to go, there is not room, there are not the resources, you have to go home. But the survivalists have also dedicated the last 20 years of their life to surviving a moment like this one. So who is actually in the wrong here? The survivalists, who are shooting people, they are committing murder, but they are defending themselves and they are preserving their families and their future. Or the people who spent the last 20 years going, ha ha, crazy survivalists, I'm not going to help you. I'm not going to give you money to buy myself a place in your structure. You know, I'm not going to volunteer some of my time to have my kids considered. I'm just going to laugh at you and then expect you to help me when the comet's coming. So the first rule of a good survival plan is don't tell anyone you're not bringing with you about your good survival plan. Because unfortunately, everyone has someone else they want to keep. When I was presented to the story I read, I really did do that to my friends for a year. For a year, I'd be like, okay, imagine. You have no reason to doubt that I could do this. What would you do? And you'd always get someone that argued about the number of doses of vaccine. You can't just give me 10. You can't. I don't mind that you're wiping out the human race, but you have to save these 30 people that are super important to me. And I'm like, that is the kind of thinking that leads to saving the entire human race. That's not my goal here. When the comet's coming, you can't save the entire human race. I wish you could, but that's what a comet's for. Now, you all live in California. California is the land of big earthquakes. We don't have them very often, but right now we're having a lot of rain, which we're not used to anymore. And that is leading to power outages and mudslides and other problems. So when you get home, as you're thinking about that comet, think about updating your earthquake kit. You know, get some bottled water in there. Make sure that you've got some dry food. If you're someone that really requires medication, you're on antidepressants, you need a certain painkiller, whatever, remember that you can usually get an extra month from your pharmacist just once to put in your kit. Those will be good for a year. At the end of the year, when they're 11 months old, take them out and use them and put your new refill in there. So you always have a 1 month supply of whatever pills you need to be alive and healthy and happy in your kit. So that if there is a disruption that causes us not to have access to primary services for a month, you'll be okay. This is harder for diabetics, and I apologize. But if it's, you know, antidepressants, you can manage it. Yay, I'm the most cheerful author you'll ever have talk here. Everybody's gonna die. My poor mom gets to ride back to Concord with me. I'm all amped up now. Woo, death of mankind. Oh, you want me to tell you about the new book, Symbiont. The new book is the sequel to the last book, which was called Parasite, and it's about genetically engineered tapeworms. And I had a tapeworm for a year to do research. I went to the Minnesota Museum of Parasitology, and they gave it to me in a pill. His name was Timmy. And you have never seen horror like the look on the face of your dining companion when you say, oh no, I get to use the royal we. That is book 2 of a trilogy. So the first book was Parasite, which came out last year. It's available in both hardcover and now in paperback. This is Symbiont, which just came out the Tuesday before Thanksgiving. My bioengineered tapeworm book comes out. That's some planning, Orbit. Yay! And then next year, about this time, the third book, Chimera, will come out. And that is it. We're done. We're closed. I finished book 3 and turned it in. What's awful is I did initially sell this as a duology. So halfway through Symbiont, I'm calling my agent and going, we have a problem. What's the problem? Remember how I said I could write a duology? Yes. It turns out I was wrong. Ha ha. Please contact Orbit and ask them if they'll let me publish a third book. What if they say no? Then we publish second book with no ending. Yay! But fortunately, they agreed to let me have a third book. I really like them. I am very excited by tapeworms. I find the hygiene hypothesis extremely compelling. So the hygiene hypothesis holds that the reason for the rise in allergies and autoimmune disorders among the population is because for literally millennia, humans lived alongside with and affected by parasites. Almost everyone would have a parasitic infection at some point in their lives, possibly more. Sometimes they just have systemic parasitic infections for their entire lives. And they didn't have very many allergies. And they didn't have very many autoimmune disorders. These are all relatively recent developments as far as, human goes. What the hygiene hypothesis holds is that our immune systems evolved to be hypervigilant so that they could fight against those parasites and keep them from killing us. So an immune system in the absence of a parasite is sort of like a 5-year-old boy with a baseball bat standing in a room full of breakable shit. Now maybe your 5-year-old boy will become content just balancing the bat on his hand and going, wee! But most 5-year-old boys are going to start going, okay. And I will say that during the year that I had my tapeworm, I had fewer colds and my allergic reactions were less severe. There is human testing going on right now with controlled hookworm infections to treat celiac and Crohn's disease.
You talk about this tapeworm, Timmy,
Timmy.
in the past tense.
Timmy is no longer with us. I miss him dearly, but it's all right because his ghost still haunts my digestive tract, sapping nutrients from my soul instead of from my body. It took rather more courses of antiparasitics than planned to get rid of Timmy, so there were a couple Facebook updates that only made sense to a small number of people. It was like, yay, Timmy's back, and they're all going, no, that's not yay. That is the opposite of yay. My best friend spent like a year making me wear gloves or wash my hands before I touched anything. I would wash my hands, walk out of the bathroom, and she'd be like, no, go wash your hands. They're still wet and smell like, so go wash your hands. Okay. But Timmy is no longer with us because this is being recorded for posterity. Please don't ask about the process of getting rid of Timmy because you probably don't want to know, and I'm pretty sure no one else in this room wants to know. I wish I didn't know, but I'm going to have to know for the rest of my life. So, no. Yes, Mom. Mom has her hand up. Mom would like the microphone.
Like a roundworm is passed from person to person. If you touch the roundworm, how do you get?
Well, roundworm's not actually a parasite. Roundworm is a fungus that just grows. Seriously. Roundworm is a fungus that grows in this shape. That's why you can get rid of it with a topical cream.
Or fingernail polish.
Or fingernail polish. So there are a lot of fun ways to get parasites. The most common fun way of getting a parasite is what we call fecal oral. Guess what he's eating? Stuff. And the fun thing about fecal oral transmission is, did you know that every time you flush your toilet without putting the lid down, it sends aerosolized toilet water through the bathroom? So if your toothbrush is too close to the toilet, you're brushing your teeth with feces every time. Yay! Everybody get a toothbrush cover, yay! And put the freaking lid down, yay! It's not just a girl thing. It's I don't want your cholera thing. There are lots of ways of getting parasites. The most common parasite in the world is, unfortunately, malaria. Which is not a thing the hygiene hypothesis supports because the malaria parasite kills you. And that is so small that most people catch it from mosquitoes. So a mosquito bite passes the malaria parasite along and it lives in your body and everything gets awful. We treat malaria as a disease because it is. Disease is a very catch-all word, but it is a parasitic infection. Tapeworms are generally gotten by eating undercooked meat, or by fecal oral transmission. If you touch the dirt in your garden and a coyote has peed there or pooped there, and then you touch your mouth, you can get coyote tapeworms. Every species on Earth has different tapeworms, and they all prioritize a different part of the body to hang out in. So like pig tapeworms, which are trichinosis, the most common kind in humans right now. Pig tapeworms are bad because pigs are so similar to humans that pig tapeworms are like, hey, I can live here. and they have a little party, and sometimes they get bored, and they migrate to your brain. And that's not fun for anybody, not even the tapeworm, because once it's in there, it can't figure out how to get out. It's like, fuck. Where the hell? It's like going onto the Google campus for the tapeworm. It's never getting out. It is stuck. It cannot find visitor parking. It cannot leave, and it's going to get arrested. It's terrible. Coyote tapeworms, on the other hand, infect your eye. And once they are there, they start chewing holes in your retinas. Now, you know what doesn't grow back? Your retinas. So you will actually go blind if you get a coyote tapeworm. Raccoon tapeworms go for the liver. Goat tapeworms are a lot like the pig tapeworm in that they parasitize your digestive system. But goats are enough different from humans that the goat tapeworm is like, what? I'm just going to hang out here and drink some blood and hope my mom comes to pick me up soon. This sucks. Wasn't Timmy a goat tapeworm? Timmy was a goat tapeworm. I did not want a tapeworm that was hugely comfortable in my body. I wanted my tapeworm to understand that it was a temporary tenant and was being evicted. Fish tapeworms, their entire reproductive cycle is disrupted by being in the human body. They don't know what to do. So they will actually reproduce at such a prodigious rate that they clog up your stomach, and you can't actually eat or drink anymore. You can die of dehydration because of the number of fish tapeworms in your stomach. This is not as good of a weight loss plan as it sounds. Tapeworms are great. Oh yeah, it's terrible. But you'll lose a lot of weight before the doctor has to go in and remove the giant worm bezoar from your stomach. Now you really know that if you ask a question, I say horrible things. Come on. I am morally obligated by the length of the drive to continue talking for at least another 9 minutes. Technically, we have an hour and 9 minutes, but y'all are more interested in laughing at me than asking me questions, so that's probably not going to happen.
Okay, so what's better than toxoplasmosis?
Not having toxoplasmosis.
Come on, there's anything that affects humans in a more interesting way than that?
So toxoplasmosis, which is a parasitic infection that you get from your cat, is great because what toxo wants is to be in a cat. But a lot of parasites are kind of like humans. You know, we grow up in our parents' houses, then we go off to college, then we get an apartment. We don't like the apartment, so we move back into our parents' houses. So that's kind of primary host is the parents' house. Well, with toxoplasmosis, it really wants to live in the cat. But the eggs and the tiny toxo get passed out of the cat through feces and urine and wind up in the cat box. Well, they don't like it there. It's kind of terrible there. So they wait for rats and mice to come into the cat box looking for things to eat or just kind of scuttling over waste as happens. And then, hey, I live in a shitty apartment now. Its name is Mickey. And once they're living in Mickey Mouse, the toxo goes into the mouse's brain and rewires it to take away the fear of cats. So mice, rats, squirrels, anything small that would normally smell cat urine and be like, nope, 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 nope. It rewires their brain so that they're like, ooh, cat pee. I want to see if I can find the source of that. And they go looking for cats. And then they're like, hi. And the cat is like, okay, whoop, and eats them. And the toxo gets to move back into its parents' house. This is a great loop if you happen to be toxoplasmosis. However, because humans keep cats, we have a lot of cat pee and cat poo in our homes, and we wind up interacting with it, and people can be infected with toxoplasmosis. They found that women with toxoplasmosis become more outgoing, more promiscuous, and more likely to wrap their car around a tree. Men with toxoplasmosis actually become less contentious, more social, more mild, and a little bit worse at World of Warcraft. Like they've genuinely found that for women it decreases driving skill and for men it decreases reaction time. So you're worse at Twitch games and we're worse at getting home alive. Now, since we do not have cats large enough to eat people anymore, yet, for toxoplasmosis, humans are a dead end. Toxo does not want to be in us because it can't get out, it can't get back to its parents' house. Unfortunately, it's very hard to test for toxoplasmosis in cats. And toxo can be extremely, extremely dangerous. Most cases in adult humans, in folks that are not immunocompromised, will be symptomless other than the small personality changes, which, let's face it, if you have enough cats that you've come into contact with that much cat pee, no one's going to notice. But it can cause blindness. It can cause serious, serious danger to unborn children. So pregnant women or women who are attempting to become pregnant should not clean their own cat boxes. Not being the United States government, I will not say women who could potentially become pregnant should not clean cat boxes. But if you've decided, hey, I want to have a baby, make your boyfriend clean the cat box. That's what he's for. Or, in my case, anyone that's not me. So toxoplasmosis is great. We actually don't have anything that modifies human behavior as severely as toxoplasmosis. There are a couple of other parasites and fungi that mess with other members of the animal kingdom that much. The cordyceps fungus is very big right now. Everybody loves cordyceps. Woo, cordyceps. But it only reprograms ants. There's a really great parasitic barnacle that attacks crabs, and it is a castrator. It's a chemical castration process. So it gets onto male crabs. It cuts off their little crabby testosterone equivalent. It's not actually testosterone, but I don't remember what it is because I'm not a crab scientist. And then it slowly rewires the crab to think that it's a girl crab. And then once the crab has decided that it's a girl crab, the barnacle starts exploding in the crab baby place. And then the crab will spend the rest of its life nurturing and caring for this barnacle that has literally devoured its sexual organs and taken it out of the gene pool. So that's super fun. That is not something that goes for humans yet. Science is a miracle. Yay.
I like hearing about all this disease and natural biology kind of stuff. And do you have some favorite books you could recommend?
I highly recommend reading The Return of the Black Death, the World's Greatest Serial Killer, which is actually a book about the hemorrhagic fever theory of the Black Death. It includes the primary epidemiological evidence, and it's considered a pop science book, which doesn't mean it's bad. It means that it's written to be accessible. So it does not assume that you have a medical degree going in. I actually do recommend The Hot Zone by Richard Preston. It's very dated now, but it includes some really good links to primary and secondary sources, and it'll give you kind of a grounding in why Ebola is terrifying but difficult to catch and not worth worrying about more than the flu. For parasites, take a look at Parasite Rex, which, oh, you've read Parasite Rex. Excellent. That is a good thing. Have you read Ghost Maps? Ghost Maps is the story of Jon Snow and the Downstreet Pump Handle and the birth of modern epidemiology, which is great. Ghost Maps. Also take a look at the Barbary Plague, which is the true story of the bubonic plague in San Francisco at the turn of the 19th century, and why anyone who tells you that San Francisco is not a city built on racism is an idiot. We literally built a fence around Chinatown because people had decided that all the bubonic plague was coming out of Chinatown, and the only reason it was not burnt down with all of its residents inside is because someone pointed out at the last city council meeting before we lit the matches, this might be bad for tourism. Like they were literally going to burn the Chinese residents of San Francisco to death alive because of the bubonic plague. Yay, racists. So that's a super fun book. I love it a lot. Virus X is good. And then I think it's called Virus Detectives is the title, the true story of the EIS, the Epidemic Intelligence Service, which is the Virus Detectives of the CDC. They are the sub-branch of the CDC whose job it is to walk into the worst places in the world with a stick and go, let's see if this kills us. Nope. Nope. Get a bigger stick. They're great. I love the EIS. They are fantastic, fantastic people.
Hey, so on Tumblr, Sarah Reese Brennan recently had a post about killing characters off, which you commented on and threatened to collaborate with her, which signed me up for pre-orders now. But I'd love to hear you talk about, she sort of talked about this character, I put him in there to get killed off for reasons X, Y, and Z.
Yeah, I tried that. I tried that once. I had this character who was completely intended to die. Like their whole purpose was to die. Everyone talked about how they were going to die. They didn't die. Their best friend died. I was a little startled by that. I'm like, wait, what just happened? My subconscious lies to me a lot, like a lot, because it's the only way that I will embark on these 10-book series without going, nope, I've got too much TV to watch. So I will frequently find myself getting to like, I'm 2/3 of the way through with this book. It's great. I'm going to be done with the the ending is still like 180,000 words away. Has this been a trilogy all along? Because I don't let myself understand the scope of what I'm embarking on. There's at least one character whose life was saved by a coin flip, which means that another character's life was ended by the coin. No, there's two. There's two characters in the same series where I'm like, I could kill person A or I could kill person B. A or B. A or B. I'm going to flip a coin. Sorry. Which is interesting because the coin really likes killing white dudes. I appreciate that. I literally had a position where I had a Chinese American and a Russian Jewish American, and I flipped the coin and it's like, kill the Russian guy. Oh, sorry, Dave. The person I named him after was very put out. So I'm not as foreshadowy as Sarah, but Sarah Reese Brennan, who is lovely. She's absolutely splendid. She's this tall. I'm only exaggerating a little. She's actually 6 foot. She is enormous and she is proportionate. So it looks like you have just taken someone and sized them up on the Sims height scaler. Everything has gone. She's not a tall, thin person. And she's Irish. And she has one lazy eye that sort of wanders about and looks at other things. It's not actually looking at them, but she'll tell you it is because she's a horrible person. And when she's having a bad day, she'll get on and go, Shannon, I need you to read me Veronica Mars porn over Skype. I'm like, okay, I can do that. You have come upon a coping mechanism I can meet. It's like having your very own evil leprechaun. And she is absolutely splendid. I love Sarah to death, and she is one of the most bloody-minded people I know that is not me. We get along fabulously. She's one of my favorite humans. She's also a YA author, so she gets a lot of crap for stuff that I get no crap for at all, which frustrates us both, not because I want crap, but because no one deserves crap for things like, I freely admit that I wrote fan fiction because I'm trying to be aspirational for all of the young women of the world that might someday want to become professional authors. I get people going, wow, Mira Grant likes fanfic. And she gets people going, plagiaristic slut. And I'm like, how? Wait, no. Sarah, come on, we're going to leave now. And she actually joins in when I say, for science. She'll be like, yes, let's eat all of these pies for science. So we ate a lot of pie. And Sarah is splendid. If you like YA fiction at all, or if you have someone in your life who likes YA fiction, I really recommend her Lindburn Legacy books, which are the story of a girl named Cami and her imaginary friend, who is not imaginary, but is very, very hot. And Sarah had written the first of those before we actually became friends, which is why I will give her endless oceans of shit for the fact that there is a rhyme about the Lindburns in the Lindburn Legacy that does not scan. And I'm like, no, honey, no. Your poetry has to scan. That's what poetry's for. Apple red, corn of gold, and almost not everyone gets old. Like, no. We could have fixed this. If you had just time traveled 6 months into the future and been like, we're friends now, I would have fixed it for you. So I get to fix these things for her from now on. Sarah is splendid. Sarah is best.
I know that your oeuvre is broad, but I want to ask you, I think of you most strongly in the Newsflesh
Many people do.
trilogy. And I want to ask of the embarrassment of riches of zombie media and literature available, what do you like?
Well, the problem is in my reading tastes, I am just as dichotomous because I really love the literary equivalent of the bad B horror movie. Like, if you completely commit to what you're doing, I am with you. I will follow you into that dark, terrible place of terrible, dark darkness. But I'm also like, ooh, you're doing something interesting and new, and I've never seen this. Let's follow you into the intellectual fields of halcyon flowers, which is bad. I highly recommend The Raising of Stony Mayhall by Daryl Gregory, which is essentially the Zombie Jesus book, and it's beautifully written. It's absolutely ingenious. I do like Jonathan Maybury. He was a very, very sweet man, and he has his Dead of Night, Fall of Night, X of Night books. Jonathan is a really nice guy who puts up with the fact that I know that his virology is crap, and I give him crap for his crap virology every time I see him. He's like, yes, dear. Not all of us are you. I think that's meant to be a compliment. It's not, but we can take it. I hate mentioning it in this context because it kind of gives away some of what it's about, but the single best book I read in 2014 was The Girl with All the Gifts by M.K. Carey. It is only out in hardcover right now, though it is also an ebook. If you see it in a bookstore, it's a very yellow-orange cover with just the silhouette of a girl like this against it, and it's genius. It's so good. And I wish I wasn't telling you as much about it as the context of the statement tells you, but it is so worth reading. It is so worth your time. And it is a beautiful example of how gender equality in science fiction doesn't have to be a thing you work for. One of my favorite movies of the last 5 years was Wreck-It Ralph, which if you look at Wreck-It Ralph, they completely effortlessly, without any visible strain, any compromisation of the story, any unnecessary romance, set up a thing where your protagonist and your duder and your secondary protagonist, which I can't pronounce right now, you have 2 men and 2 women. In the antagonist camp, you have a man and a woman, and there's no effort. There's no point where you feel like, oh, they made Taffeta a girl because they wanted to have balance. No, they just made a female character who was an absolute bitch. And it's lovely, and it's beautifully done. And The Girl with All the Gifts manages a very similar balance, where you're reading through and going, there is no character who is in here to be the dude, the chick, the this. They are just people who are stuck in this bad situation and trying to survive this bad situation, and it's beautiful. This is absolutely lovely. And then David Wellington, who did the Monster Island trilogy, he did Monster Island, Monster Nation, Monster World, has a new book coming out, which I just blurbed for him, and I'm very excited about, and it is called, I don't remember what it's called, which is terrible, because it has no cover, and the covers are what I always remember. But it's David Wellington, and he is great. So, see people looking at watches and such, so I assume you have work to get to. Do we have any other questions before I sign books? Oh yes, we have one other question.
So where did you get the Mira Grant name from?
What's kind of fun there is it was a combination of factors. I wrote down every last name I could come up with that had one or more references to classic horror and science fiction movies, and it was purely movies. I stuck with those. And then I wrote down a bunch of first names and took them to my editor, because my editor had said he really wanted me to have a pseudonym for these books for very valid reasons, and said, I want to be Samantha Grant. And he said, okay, the .com is unavailable. Can we get the .com? No. The .com for Samantha Grant is being camped by a soccer mom who has not updated since 1994 and would not give me her domain. I don't mind you having the domain of your name, but maybe update it. And when you're coming up with a pseudonym, it turns out that being able to get the .com is a hugely important factor. So we went down the first name list, and we hit on Mira. I have not had anybody find both of the directions that they came from, for which I am sad. So sad. People will sometimes hit on one or the other, but never both. So sad. But also, Mira Grant is great because my real last name is McGuire, which when I sign is a great big M and a C and a great big G and a squiggle. And Mira Grant is just a great big M, a dot, a great big G, and then a squiggle. So it made my signature much easier to come up with. So thank you for having me.